So, hello everyone,
Right.
welcome. If you haven't been with us very long,
Frozen.
my name's Robert Ramirez. This is the Brown Book Club. We've been going for just over 5 years now. We just hit the 5 year mark in July, so it's been great. We've read, what is this, like our 70th book, maybe
Wow.
73rd, something like that. But we're enjoying it. We've shared our stories for so long. We've shared books for so long, and yeah. So with that out of the way, we're just really thankful to have two awesome authors, two awesome individuals with us today. We have Charley Trujillo, author of Soldados, Chicanos in Vietnam. Um, been around a long time, been a name, been a name in the Chicano community for a long time. Every book, everything that I look with in relation to Chicanos in Vietnam, Charlie's name pops up. Even before the book club, and I was just like YouTubing things, Charlie would come up. So um, very awesome to have you joining us today. And then we have Mr. Richard T. Garcia. Rich, his book here. Oh yeah, everyone has their books. Love to see it. Um, I don't like how it blurs it out, right? Like if it's something bad, no. But San Jose to Vietnam and back. Awesome book. I've learned so much, and yeah, I hope you guys are ready for us to pick your brains a bit today. All right. Oh, there comes Jocelyn. Can't have a Zoom without Jocelyn. All right. So before we get started, I'd like to start with a bit of an icebreaker question, and I'm going to give you guys both the same question. But Charlie, we'll start with you. If you could have dinner, drinks, lunch with anybody from history, who would it be and why?
Living or passed away.
Either or.
Dolores Huerta.
Oh,
Nice. I'm sure you can make that happen. And why the Dolores?
Because for all the work that she's done, and especially at I'm 75 years old, and sometimes I say, well, I'm getting tired and all that other stuff, but she's just a role model for us seniors. I mean, how old is she? 91, 92 years old, and she's all over the place. She does not give up. I mean, she's just an inspiration for everyone, but especially for the seniors, and of course the stuff that she's done. I grew up as a migrant farm worker, and around Delano, a little town in Corcoran, and I saw even though everyone was not unionized, but I saw the tremendous difference that they'd made. Of course, they have their faults. They've made mistakes. I can't say they haven't, but what organization has not, or each individual. But that aside, I mean, we could have bathrooms out there. We could have water, and so even though we weren't all unionized, there was a tremendous difference. We could get unemployment.
Wow.
All these things of that sort. So it would be Dolores Huerta.
nice.
Great answer. Is there anybody perhaps not living that comes to mind?
Probably Malcolm X.
Nice.
Nice.
What would you ask Malcolm, or would you just listen to everything he had to say? That's what I would do.
Yeah, yeah. I would just listen to him, and I've it really enlightened me when I read his book, The Autobiography of Malcolm X, and then I began to study him. When I was diagnosed for post-traumatic stress disorder, I don't know why the psychologist or psychiatrist asked me who were my influences after I came back from Vietnam and went to school, and I told him it was Karl Marx and Malcolm X.
Nice. All right, awesome, great. Thank you for those answers, Rich. Oh, I think you're muted.
My first
There,
thought
there.
was Benito Juarez,
Oh, nice.
Nice.
being the first indigenous president of Mexico. And I guess I'd like to learn from him as much as I could about that journey, how difficult it may have been or how rewarding it was.
Oh, absolutely. That's a good one.
I just want to say thank you to both of you. I haven't finished reading them yet, but my brother was in Vietnam. So this is giving me a good insight into him and his thinking. So thank you very much. And thank you, Robert, for for bringing these two. I don't know anything about our history, so thank you. This book club has helped me. So thank you both for writing about the whole Vietnam war that we involuntarily um,
Thank you. You know,
volunteered for.
right. If you could also go on YouTube, I have a documentary that I've made.
Okay.
It's Soldados, the same name. And in that the short documentary, it came out on PBS about 20 years ago.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
also interviewed the families of the guys.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. He never talked about it when he came back. So,
Right. That's a symptom of PTSD.
yep, I'm
Hmm.
sure. I'm
Hmm.
sure of it.
Hmm.
He's gone now, but
Oh
he never
no.
talked about it when he came back.
Oh
So,
no. Yeah.
I'm from Fresno, California, and I have a brother that's a Vietnam vet, and I have another brother who's an Iraqi vet, and both of them have PTSD. One of them doesn't talk about it at all, no problem, and the other one, admittedly, so. Okay, so one of the questions I have are today's military vets more open to participating in mental health services as compared to previous wars? And along that line, is there a common thread that as to why some of these vets never confront their PTSD issues? Either one of you.
I,
Uh,
I've been going through psychotherapy since in the late 70s till now. And through the years, it's become more useful or more relevant. In the past, how would I say it? It's sort of like the white doctor walks in and he's got the cure for you. So you go, what the heck is this? I can't relate to you. But I think presently, from what I get from the guys that I've met that's gone to recent wars, some of them have been counseled in the field. They bring it. They've had a big contact of some type, and they would have reason to believe some of them were kind of messed up from it, and they would go to a aid station, and there'd be a social worker to talk to them about what they're really facing and what their options are. So I think it's improved quite a bit. Before there were no counselors. We talked to our friends or mostly people outside of the family because the family members had no idea about psychiatric problems or how to deal with them. They just, ask you to pray or think good thoughts, stuff like that. That only helps so much. So I feel it's improved. And it's I meet more younger vets that are in counseling where before it was never talked about. So I would say it's more prevalent now, more helpful now.
yeah, I haven't seen any studies myself, but just from my observations, yeah, I think it took the Vietnam veterans about 20 years, to really start talking about this PTSD. And but the little that I see, it seems like the more recent vets, they are seeking more treatment. And what um, Garcia was talking about, it seems like it has improved. My father and his brother were World War II veterans, and now that I know much more about PTSD, they suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I have uncles who were Korean War veterans, and they also suffered from it, but they would never admit it, because it's first of all looked upon as being a weak. You're a man, you're a soldier, you keep it in, but that has changed. One of the things that I would really like to do as a publisher, because I do publish other people, is I would like to do put a book together. If you can contact me, I would like to put if you know someone, I'd like to put a book together about women veterans with PTSD. That's a group that's very, very neglected, and they have their own, not only what the males have, but and I'm not being patronizing here, but in terms of being females in an all male dominated culture, So I would really like to put something together about women veterans.
Okay, hi. My name's Olivia. I live in San Diego. Thank you both for being here and for having this conversation with us. Hi. Um, yeah, I work with a lot of veterans through my work. I work at the VA. I've been there for about 25 years. Um, so, um, okay, this was something that I was surprised reading was that how many Chicanos enlisted, and I was under the impression that most were drafted. So that was a surprise to me. And maybe that's just like of the stories that were here. And I say guys because I don't know how many women were also out there with you.
Well, it wasn't until 1973 that they opened up the military for more military occupations. Beforehand, it was the women were mostly nurses and clerks and things of that sort. But it changed after 73. So what was your question? I lost my train of thought there.
I was just saying I was surprised at the number of people that enlisted in your group of stories because I was under the impression that most Chicanos
Oh no, no, no. The ones in
drafted.
my book, most of them were drafted.
Okay.
But then again, I haven't seen the exact number for the Chicanos, but the Marines were all volunteers, just about.
Okay, because I was reading and
Yeah.
I thought it was saying like we didn't have much choice, so we decided to enlist instead of being drafted, or maybe I misunderstood.
Well, there was some, of course. I was one of those. Okay, and then the Navy guy, and then there's a couple of Marines, but I haven't really counted them. But I think probably 2/3 of them were drafted. But what happens in the military is also reflective of what's here in the greater society in terms of educational attainment. I mean, I'm talking in generalities here. So the better education that you have, even if you were drafted, uh, generally speaking, the better you were put in more specialized jobs rather than just the infantry or the more combat specialties. And if you had a lower, educate or didn't quite do it as very well in school, you were put into these MOSs, as they call them, more into the combat. So there's an excellent book called, but it's not just Chicanos. Remember, there was multi-ethnic, black soldiers and white soldiers and Native Americans. Uh, Read a book called Working Class War. Working Class War by Herbert, I mean, no, what, Chris Appy, Appy. He breaks down very well. He was a Harvard professor. I know him personally. We've been on a couple of radio stations, and he really breaks it down as to how it was a working class war.
I have a little story about females in the military, if you give me a minute. Um, in 1969, I was medevaced for malaria a couple of times, and the first time was in a place called Longman, the 93rd Evacuation Hospital. So a couple of years ago, my daughter and I took this thing called the Honor Flight. It's a free trip to DC for vets. And there was an orientation meeting in a VFW hall in Roseville, I believe. Anyway, they went down the line and asked people to introduce themselves and tell us what they did in the service. And they came across this one lady, not very young. She looked a little older, and she said, "I worked at the 93rd back between 68 and 70." So I thought, damn, I wonder if I ran into her. So I went and asked her, and she said, yeah, I was in charge of the ward as a captain that you were in. So since coming back from that trip, we talked and stuff, and I found out that she lives like 4 miles from our house. And we've been out to dinner and talked to her and, visited her because it's pretty severely disabled from different diseases and illnesses from being in the war.
Wow.
And her stories are just as gruesome as a lot of infantrymen. She did a lot of hands-on work with veterans that were severely wounded or burned. So, and that was before this 73 opening of MOSs, and she was just a regular hardcore nurse. And she eventually got an education. She started teaching psychiatry at Sac State for a number of years and retired. So that's my take on the female's role in the service, from what I know.
That's awesome. I saw that you even posted a picture with her, right? It was like you and your wife and her. That's
Yeah,
what are the chances, huh?
yeah, she's special.
Yeah.
And she helped you when you had malaria? I mean,
Yeah,
she helped get you better, right? She nursed you through it.
yeah, I wouldn't have made it without her, I tell you. And I
That's
told her
good.
in front of the group, we had a dinner and then a meeting, and you could go up to the mic and say what you wanted to say, and that's what I told them. There's this lady here that probably saved my life. She's sitting right over there. So it was interesting. She's a good friend now, and she's very generous, and she's up to going out for dinner, which she likes. She's a vegetarian, but she'll pick the place. Really,
Nice. Well, since
Good.
we're talking, one of my questions to you was there a specific memory that you shared in the book that was maybe the hardest to share, or you even thought about, should I even share this? Or, was there something specific that you kind of maybe held back on or had a hard time with?
there was many, but one of them is November 29th of 68. It was a major battle in an area called Lock In. It's a French rubber plantation. It sits on the border, the Cambodian border, one side and the other. So we had this big, massive, massive fight that lasted a few days. Anyway, a lot of guys got killed there, maybe 20, 21. A bunch of guys got injured. Anyway, years go by. I'm working for the state of Ohio, and I get a call from an assistant AG, Attorney General, and he asked me, did I know um, Irvin Harris? And I said, yeah, I was with him when he got killed. He goes, well, I was his neighbor, and we played football when we were little kids in the street. I was a
Oh,
couple
wow.
years younger than him. And we want you and a few of your other guys from your company to come to a special dedication of a monument at the high school he went to for like 7 or 8 other guys that got killed in the same year in 68. So we went and I met the family. That was the hardest. And they invited us to their home and showed us the little house that the 13 kids and the parents lived in. And what they did for a living was fish in the Great Lakes, and the father had the only metal hulled boat that could break the ice to go out to fish on the lake, and people would follow him. Anyway, we get to towards a couple of days later, we're at their house, and they said, "Hey, we're going to go to the cemetery. We want you to come." And we're going to his burial site. So I go, all right. I know it's going to be rough. So my wife and I drove out there. It's out in the boonies in a little country town close to Toledo, south of Toledo. And so we gathered around the burial site, and there's this plaque on the ground with his name and the dates. And then the eldest or the elder there, the man, said, "We want you to pray." So I go, dang. My throat just tightened up really tight. And I was thinking, you really got to do it. Even though you're having this panic trip right now, which was very familiar to me. So I think I just held my wife's hand and she just kind of looked at me like, go ahead, say something. And so I did a very short prayer and asked for that the family experience prosperity and that they be
Yes.
healed from this event. Because one of the nephews told me, we come here every year, and I didn't even know the guy. They take everyone with them. So that was rough. The battle plus the after effects.
And I do want to say this Zoom is much more unique than any other one we've ever had, because we've never been talking about battle. We've never been talking about war and death. We've been talking about books and stories and things that are very dear and tough as well. But so just know that this whole conversation, we respect it. even me asking the questions and other members asking the questions, it's it's touchy. It's hard. This is not easy stuff. So we appreciate you guys again. This is not easy stuff.
Yeah, for me, the hardest part, well, some of them were very difficult, the interviews that I did, but I would say two stand out. One in the book Soldados, one is when the Marine Freddy Cavazos had his legs blown off. And then Manuel Marin, when he talked about his brother Julian, they were friends of mine. We lived in the same barrio, and well, the whole little town, Corco is a barrio, I would say. But when Julian was killed, uh, he was 19 years old, and the mother never saw him they didn't see him in the casket because he was so blown up. So for the mother, the whole family was never the same again. He would appear to them at night. They had old Mexican traditional beliefs, and they had to bring in the priest to bless the house so Julian would not show up. And he didn't after that, according to them. And also in my documentary, I interviewed La Señora Barrera, who was in that same situation, and she never saw her son. And he also lived down the street. She never saw him in the coffin. And for like 25 years, every morning she'd get up and look out the window to see if her son was coming back. And she neglected the rest of the family. She went into deep depression for many years, and that one was really hard when I interviewed these people and what happened to them and the aftermath of that. And really, I am anti-war now, and it's just not. Especially ostensibly, we were supposed to go there, fight for freedom and democracy, and all that crap. But now look what they're doing. They're even taking veterans, the ICE picking up gente. After all the stuff that we went through, I'm not the only one, of course. But after I had malaria, I got my eye knocked out, all kinds of stuff. And then when I get back home, as you see in my documentary, the Border Patrol stops me. Where are your papers? What does that tell us? What were we fighting for? It's bullshit. And that hurts my marketing, though. It's supposed to be just about heroes and things of that sort. But I can't stop by protesting.
I think most of us fully support you. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Just since we're on it, and then we'll have Patricia go next. But were there any stories that you left out that you just had to leave out completely, or?
Yeah, there's one that I kind of danced around. And I'll try to open up a little bit about it. The first malaria I got was pretty bad. I thought that was it. I really didn't know what to think. So I went to this really nice colonial building of a hospital in around Saigon, and I was there for like 3 or 4 days. I couldn't get out of bed. I drank a lot of water, ice, and quinine, and so like the second or third day, I got a little strength back. So I went to the shower, which was just 10 feet away. It was a enclosed area with faucets. So I thought, oh, the water will cool me down. My body was like burning. Felt like the top of my head was going to pop off. So anyway, I get in the shower and I'm holding on to the nozzle and I feel kind of lightheaded. And I looked up and there's a window to the top at the top left and there's this bright light shining. And that's the last thing I saw till I was in bed. I guess I knocked out in the shower and somebody dragged me to my bed. So later I thought, well, was that God or what? Did I see him or so I that's in the book and I researched some scriptures that say you can't see him unless you die, and others that say it is possible. But that was one difficult situation.
I haven't really, other than my part in the Soldados book and my little part in the documentary, because I am one of the people who's interviewed for that documentary, even though I'm also the director and producer. But I I will be writing about that in my book that I am in. Well, I've been writing it for 20 years. I should finish it hopefully pretty soon. It's called The Real Life of a Dead Chicano, Patas de Perro. It's a fictional memoir, and I will be writing more about my experiences. But I think one of the things that I really felt bad was when I was there at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. I think it's a VA hospital there in Aurora. Okay, I was there when I was transferred from Japan to Fitzsimmons, and there was a guy there. I forget what his name was. A really nice guy, a white guy. He had one leg missing, he had one arm missing, and he was blind, and he was an orphan. And they just had him in his room by himself, all dark, and they just like abandoned him. And I became really good friends with him. I would take him out, and we had a really good time. And really, really nice guy, good attitude. And when I got my discharge from that hospital, I went home, and my only regret is that I should have taken him home with me. That was really, really sad with that guy. I mean, he didn't have anyone, and he was blind and all messed up, and I really felt bad about that. Extra, extra bad. But I was only 20 years old, and I said, well, I'm going home and all this other stuff. But that's about one regret I do have.
Patricia Reynolds. I'm here in beautiful downtown Riverside, California, home of the Chishmarin Center for Chicano Art and Culture, for which I'm the board president. So there I got my plug in. Thank you all for being here today. This is a great conversation, a necessary conversation, but it's making me rather sad. And I know I submitted some questions, but I'm going to change it up. Sorry, Robert. There's a couple of things. One of the things I noticed was the race relations among the American soldiers. And it seems that a lot of the heroic actions taken by Chicanos and Blacks, sometimes they weren't given the credit. Others took the credit, got the awards, got the promotions. How did you all deal with that at the time? And has anything from that been corrected as far as you know? Did they ever go back and give people the medals or the awards that they should have gotten way back?
Well, on 12/29/68, I was involved in a little fight at a riverbed, sort of a little creek, and it was quite a bit of shooting going on, and my radio operator got shot and killed, and we had to leave him in the river because
Yeah.
we were taking so much fire. So we went back and got him. Anyway, we did a lot of stuff there, taking prisoners, and of course, firing on the NVA. And then my lieutenant put us all in for an award, and we never heard about it until like 71. We all got these Vietnamese awards. And I thought, well, what happened to the American award? The Vietnamese weren't even there, and they're sending us the stuff. Anyway, I bought a book by the guy that was in charge of that. There was my unit, then there was another unit we were under. It's called Operational Control. Anyway, he says he flew down, and there was nobody there, and he does all this John Wayne stuff and takes the prisoners himself. And he made a comment about how he took the operator's pistol and used that. And I talked to a couple of guys on the phone. One was the lieutenant. He lives in Kansas. He's pretty messed up. Anyway, I told him, did you get the book and read that on page 264? I think he goes, no, I don't have it. He goes, it says that he took the RTO's pistol and started shooting stuff. And he says, that's baloney, because the last thing he did was reach out to me with the hand mic to give it to me, and that was the end. So, and he writes this book about what a great warrior he is, and he just made up the awards for himself and the guys that were in his units, and we got nothing. except for the Vietnamese wars, where we look at what the heck was this, kind of a token. But that did occur. I think it was very common. Officers taking privilege.
Yeah, one thing that changed after 1968 with the morale amongst the soldiers, it really changed because remember, after 68, when Nixon came in, the United States was retreating from Vietnam, what they call it, peace with honor. And that's when over half the guys were unalived. Can you imagine that the war you're pulling out and people are still being killed? So the morale was really bad amongst the black soldiers, especially with Martin Luther King coming out against the war. The Black Panthers and even the Chicano movement, the moratorium coming out against the war. So it really changed amongst the ranks. There was a place called Long Bin Jail, LBJ. And in 1968, they had a big race riot. Many of the prisoners were black. I remember now when Richard was there in 68, it was very different than when I was there in 70. A lot of things changed, the tactics changed, and there were also the unaliving of officers. If you read in Soldados, my friend Mike, their company of all Chicanos, which was very rare, they off their captain. Okay, and I've also written a book called Dogs from Illusion, a novel. I call it a postmodern picaresque novel. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good when I go to literature classes, and I use humor. Okay, I try to use as much humor as I can. Sometimes it's gallows humor, pero también es que en veces lo que se dice cábula, like Jocko humor. Try to it's a psychological ploy and try to lessen things up by using humor. And I've written that. So, and then I'm rewriting it now. That came out 30 years ago, and I'm rewriting it in code switching. It's all in Spanglish, the whole thing. Because the first edition that I wrote, I tried to put subtitles on the bottom, but it distracts the reader. So this time I'm inventing my own language, which I find if you like, I could send you some samples, or some of you would like to see what I'm doing. I'm inventing my own language because it's code switching or Spanglish as they call it. It's a spoken language, but I'm writing it down all in a novel. So I feel real free because I can express, because that's the best way I can express myself when I'm telling stories. So I have my own grammar. So I'm really excited about that. And also, I've written a screenplay, Dogs from Illusion, and I've gone to Hollywood, and they all reject me. Of course, just like my first book, I was rejected by 100 publishers. So I've hit up Chicano producers. I don't want to name them, but they all say no. They don't. And one of the things that I've done in that Dogs from Illusion, there's also a trailer that I made. You can find it on YouTube called Dogs from Illusion. It's about an 8-minute trailer. What I've done in the movie, when I wrote the screenplay, is one of the main characters. The three main characters are Ese, Machete, and Chuco. Okay, the Three Musketeers type of thing. But the other protagonist is Mao Bao. She is a Viet Cong woman, and she's in certain ways the main character, or she's one of the main characters. She's fighting, and you see why she's fighting. We never show the of why these people are fighting, right? Other than they're just communists and evil people. But no, she was defending her land. They killed her family, and now it's based on women in Vietnam who are actual combatants, snipers. Okay. So I'm using that for people to understand that it's not just good and evil, that and understanding the other side. Why are they fighting? We were the invaders. Okay, we just look at it like we're the heroes and all that kind of stuff. But no, we were the invaders. Actually, when I got wounded, and the colonel came around and tried to give me a medal, and I refused it because I had become against the war. I would have walked home if I could have, but there's an ocean in between But I just turned around. I began to identify with the Vietnamese farm workers. I didn't see why we were fighting. I mean, we would talk. What's this war about? We could never figure it out. Oh, yeah, well, this and that. But I mean, do they have oil? Do they have gold? What is the war about? We still can't figure it out. Okay, defend the United States. What, the Vietnamese aren't going to come over here and take and invade the United States and things of that sort. So very confusing time. And then there was the time of the Chicano movement, Chale con la war, and Brown Berets and all that. So it was a very confusing time. Very confusing time.
And I what I caught too in the story of Mike Solis was that he couldn't even tell who the enemy were. With the children that were running around in the villages and the North Vietnamese and South Vietnamese, it sounds like it was very confusing for the soldiers.
Yes, yes. Actually, Mike just recently passed away. Most of these guys were never the same. It was a very difficult situation to be in. But as soldiers, as an ethnic group, politics aside, we were very good soldiers. Politics aside, you can put that aside. Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to say, because you brought it up, there's a part in the in the movie, I believe, the documentary, where you say it's as if the U.S. got our farmers to go over there and fight their farmers, and that was like super powerful. It's like, man, that's so true.
Yeah, well, of course, but it's not a stereotype, but it almost is. Most Chicanos, we're not farm workers, right? It seems like it, but most of the raza is urban. But we were farm workers. Yeah, I said, what the heck? I'm fighting these farm workers. What the heck? Yeah, and that's very difficult when you get. For me, it was back home politically, trying to understand what the war was really about. And now I've I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's basically U.S. imperialism. And things come up. I also have interviewed. I just haven't been able to get the monies. I want to put a document. Well, I interviewed these two Chicano guys, Militon and Gamboa and David Villafana, the Korean War veterans. I interviewed them a number of years back. They were like 91, 92 years old at the time. And they were in the prisoner in a death camp in North Korea. They were the first ones caught back in July of 1950, I mean. And they spent 3 years in a death camp. But I haven't been able to get the monies, all these Chicano people and everything. Even though my documentary was shown on national TV, I haven't been able to get any funds. I've applied to these Latino things, etc. And but I have all the interviews. Boy, can you imagine being in a North Korean death camp?
Wow. Yeah, that needs to be. That's a story that needs to be shared, definitely.
Yeah, maybe I should write a book based on their experiences. But it takes. I'm sure with Richard too, it took a toll on me when I wrote the first book. It takes a toll on you it's just like shall we say a woman who has been violated, for example, or someone who survives a crash when maybe your family members were killed. Those traumatic. So it's difficult to write about those things when these traumatic experiences.
I just want to thank Charley for sharing his stories with me when I worked at the library at San Jose State. And that's how Richard and I found out about veteran benefits. It was through Charley Trujillo. So I want to really thank him. Estoy muy agradecida, Charley, and for your books, for your writing, all you've done for our family that you're not aware of, not just Richard and I and our daughters, but extended family, Robledos, that and have helped throughout the years, my parents as well. So I just, I want to express that gratitude to you on behalf of Richard and our family.
Oh, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, que sigas adelante in your writing, in your pursuits for your books, your movies, and that fundraising that you're doing. God bless you, Charley.
Thank you.
Dios
Thank
te
you.
bendiga.
Yeah.
Peace and love, brother.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is I haven't been able to make this movie. I'm working with Adit Kapoor. He just graduated here from San Jose State in AI, and it looks like we're going to make the movie all in AI. I really don't want to do it that way because it takes jobs away from the actors and things of that sort. But
Yeah.
I've tried hard for 20 years or 15 years, and I put money into making a trailer. From what I gathered, people in the industry, it's very well done technically. Uh, but so I'm just going to go that way and just make it all AI. But what I like about that is that if I could do that, we could make so many other things like Tiburcio Vasquez. There's so many, that's Gorras Blancas, the Chicanas, all kinds of stuff that we can do with it. But not that I want to, but I'm forced into that new technology.
Yeah.
And what I want to present with all this stuff that I do is not to proselytize or people, but to show the real realities of war and not glamorize it so people could make up their own mind. It's not just Rambo or, all these John Wayne. Actually, in my movie, we killed John Wayne. It's about time, right? How many Mexicanos and native people has he killed? So I really, people get upset with that. But, of course, we're not going to kill anyone, but, it's about time that what happens, I think, as Chicanos, we're usually on the defensive for many reasons. But I am on the offensive, and that scares people. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to be talking bold stuff to get a rush out of people or to be rude. But hey, attack them. But we're not used to that because we get punished. But I'm not talking about attacking in a negative way. I'm just saying, hey, be on the offensive. Why are we always on the defensive? So that hurts my marketing.
Yeah, just for people out there, if you have family members that are veterans that have been in the wars, really encourage them to go seek mental health assistance through the VA. There are some really good people out there. There's even benefits for family members, as myself, maybe my daughter, as caregivers. And although they're cutting back on services, there are benefits you need to find out about, especially with mental health.
Yeah,
Thank you,
because
Timo.
it affects the whole families, even the grandkids sometimes. And then another
Absolutely.
thing that's really, in this case, Vietnam veterans is that Agent Orange. I've had several
Yeah.
friends die. I think the last one died about 3 years ago from cancers, from certain cancers, and also some of the grandkids because of the DNA thing that goes on. Sometimes even the grandkids are affected. They're born with defects, so that's also very difficult. And it's, as I said in my documentary, I talk to the moms and to the wives because they're the ones who actually uh, deal with the burden of the guys with PTSD. That's where I learned about PTSD when I interviewed the families of these veterans. I have like 30 hours, but they only of footage, at least 40 hours. I interviewed the families from my hometown, and where I found out that PTSD was really, really real was through the families. They're the ones that can tell you what's going on with these guys. They said, but when this guy left and he came back a year later or 6 months, whatever it was, he says they were totally different people because they know. But the veterans, of course, we see it, stuff like that. But it's when especially the women see it even more, and the parents.
You. Hey, this is really for Richard. When I first heard about Richard's book, I was really amazed that he chose this time to write it. So, for Richard, if you can tell us why you chose this time to publish your book, with all this time to reflect and that journey for you, and your thoughts on the military deploying active duty members to American cities, please.
Why did I write it?
No, why did you decide to publish it now?
Well, I had been writing since 1970 short stories, a lot of stuff to myself, and I journaled it. And the timing was I retired in '06. I had a lot of time at home, and most of my work experience was spent writing reports like for 30 years. And I thought, well, why don't you write about something more relevant than what happened uh, respective to the office work? Is I had time to do it. And one thing about PTSD and memory, your short-term memory may be affected because of the release of certain hormones, and your system is overwhelmed by them. So it'll affect your short-term memory. But in my case, it enhanced my long-term memory. I could remember all kinds of stuff, like when I was 3 and 4 years old, related to um, growing up in the hood. And one what jump-started the book writing was a visit from my uncle Fito, who had just got out of the hospital in Letterman Hospital. He lost a leg and he got his arm pretty messed up. So my dad went to pick him up in our little Chevy, brings him back, parks the car, picks him up, brings him in the house, and we have dinner, right? And then the next morning, he's at the sink shaving, and I noticed that his right pant leg was pinned behind. And I go, what the heck? Where's his leg? How could you not have a leg? So, and he was singing the song, he was singing Nature Boy by Nat King Cole. And I always kept those together. That was my Nature Boy. And that was the first title to the book, but it changed a couple of times, and we got to where we are right now with the title. Anyway, that I'm not sure if that answered your question. Why did I do it at this time? Because once I retired, I had time, and then my memory kicked in. Plus the short stories that I had written, put them together.
And then the second part, go ahead, Vincent.
No, that was perfect, sir. I really appreciate that answer. Just to kind of think of, so in my mind, I thought you were being very reflective and those pieces, and to kind of look at the way the military is now and the use that the current administration is using the military for. What are your thoughts on that? And if you can tell us, please.
Yeah, I was a cop for a short while in San Jose, and we had a lot of that riot training, riot control training, which is what they're asking the military to do, to police people when they really don't know much. It's they don't get the training as a regular cop does. So I think there's no occupational alignment between the two. It's kind of off. I'm sure most of them are willing to be there and push people around or guard buildings or something, but when it comes to having a reason to arrest somebody, it seems now that, as long as you look a certain way or speak a certain way or you live in a certain area, that's enough to snatch you. So if it was me, I would have a hard time doing it. If I was in the guard, I would really have a hard time doing it. There'd be some big questions. Probably try to get out. I'm not sure if that covered your question.
Charlie, do you have anything to
Yeah,
piggyback onto that?
one of the things a little different, but along those in certain ways along those lines, like I talked to like my relatives that went to the war, or talking to those Korean War veterans I interviewed for a week. One thing that came out as being a Chicano soldier was What if there's a war between Mexico and the United States? And they have threatened to invade Mexico. What are you going to do? Right? And which is different than the other ethnicities. And that's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And not only that, but they're attacking our communities. I mean, I know I have some friends. Remember, I have some friends who are very right wing. They want to round up all the people from Mexico and shoot them at the border. Veterans that I know of, Chicano veterans. All right, especially those guys in like the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, very right wing people, and so it's rather confusing, for our population. I mean, so that's also a question that comes out. What happens if the United States and Mexico get into a war? It's a very difficult situation if that were to occur.
How do you feel about what's happening now as far as the guard coming into our cities and?
Oh no, they're just outright Nazis, man. Outright Nazis with their mask and everything. I mean, but the Supreme Court just said that they can stop anybody that's speaking Spanish or that looks like us. They can hold you. What kind of and as veterans, they said, well, you're going to go fight for freedom, and and things of this sort, and be a patriot and stuff. And look what they're doing. Look at what they're doing to our population, which is, I used to teach Chicano studies and ethnic studies, but this, in the 1930s and 1954, with Eisenhower, supposed to be a great president. They had what in the newspapers, Operation Wetback, right? So this is because the history of the raza here, it started with conflict. It started with conflict back in 1846, 48. So actually before that, I do some TikTok videos. I'm always trying to market my stuff, No, I try to get the information out. I do TikTok videos on historical figures. And for example, Davy Crockett was an undocumented, not los Tejanos, they were illegals in Mexico back in 1836, the Alamo. They were actually, they were illegals. The first white people in here were illegals themselves. But we don't put that into perspective, right? And I look at it as if we are the forever immigrants. Forever immigrants. For example, Donald Trump, he's a good example of, he never says he's an immigrant, right? His mother came from Scotland. His sons and daughters, the eldest ones anyway. Oh, no, I think 4 of them are mothers who were born, they're not even from the United States, right? They're immigrants. But yet, some of us have been here for many generations, and we're still immigrants. So I don't want to go too much into that because people get upset about this American stuff and everything. I liken it to when I tell them that, for example, I do not consider myself an American because I'm not treated as one. And that's, that's like telling people, like when you were a kid, you found out that your mother and dad had sex, that kind of stuff. It's really disappointing. But of course, that's, how can I tell you? When I say that, I usually don't say this in public because that really upsets people, right? Even though we do live in this nation state and there is the power that is, but look at the way they treat us. I mean, Mexican American, as I say in my documentary, Mexican American, yeah, when they want us to work out here in the field, we're Mexicans, and then when there's a war, we're Americans. Or are we bipolar or what? Mexican America, what the hell, man? So as you can see, I can be quite controversial there.
Oh, you're talking to the right group of people because we read. We actually read. We actually do our homework, know our history, and so we tend to agree.
But I'm not advocating the overthrow of the state. I'm not advocating violence. I'm advocating peace. I know it may seem contradictory, but I'm not talking about that. Just for us to be intellectually and politically aware of where our situation is.
This is Victoria Valenzuela of Conocimientos Press, and I did have a question for both of gentlemen, Charlie and Richard. I was curious, did conscientious objection ever come up for you guys as an option? And how do you feel about conscientious objection even now for today's soldiers?
I think they're very brave. I think they're very brave to do that. I commend them. Yeah.
I never thought that was an option for me personally, but when I got to Nam, a lot of the medics were COs, and one of mine close to me, I saw him pick up a rifle and fire it, because he had kind of had to, but that was the only time. And there was a lot of during the late 60s, people were getting out of the draft by going to school, which was not an option for many Chicanos to get the college deferment, because that means you had a big scholarship, you were a jock, or you had parents that had money to send you to college, which was not very likely in the neighborhood. And that's about what I've got to say about that.
Yeah, I was contemplating about going to prison when I was out there in the jungle. I was there about 10 months, and I think I spent, it's very common experience for the infantry guys, nothing new. I'm not the only one, certainly, as you can tell by Richard's stories as well. But, I think I spent maybe 6 days outside the jungle. But I was thinking about, and I used to walk point and all that stuff. I volunteered for Vietnam. I volunteered for the infantry, etc. But my consciousness changed as I was going along. And the one that really changed my mind, well, it was a number of things, was the children. The children. That's what really hurt me the most, was watching the suffering of the children. And it still does. What's going on in Palestine now, with the U.S. military, with the United States sending all the money for the bombs. I've been to Palestine. It's been a number of years back. I mean, those guys will harass me all the time that they're in Jerusalem. They had patrols. It reminded me of Vietnam. They had patrols right there in Jerusalem. This was about 40 years ago. And all the children that they are suffering and dying. I, from a moral point of view, cannot condone any of that whatsoever. And I've gotten a chance to travel around the world. I've gone to the Philippines. I've gone to Japan, was a little bit different, but in terms of poverty, I've been all over Latin America. I spent one summer when I was in the 70s and 80s. I spent one winter down there just traveling around. Instead of motorcycle diaries like that Che Guevara movie, I just run around in buses. And, I didn't have much money and just hanging out. And that's when it really occurred to me that I am indigenous. When I was up there in Bolivia, over there by Lake Titicaca, y las señoras me decían, ¿de qué tribu es usted, señor? ¿De qué tribu? I said, damn, I forgot. Yeah, I'm an Indian too. Those type of things. And the poverty, I lived there in El Salvador one time back when the revolution was just beginning. I went with a friend of mine who was from there, and the suffering of the children. I mean, there's no excuse for that. I don't care who are Democrat, Republican, or anyone. There's no excuse whatsoever. There's some evil people out there.
Speaking of little kids or kids in war, on page 106, there's a picture of me and a little kid that I've got to know. We were assigned to guard this bridge, and at the bridge, living under the bridge, was Vietnamese soldiers and their families, and they would do laundry for you. If you wanted to eat their food, they would do it. They would serve you. But I got close to this little girl named Mai. She was about 3.5 or so. I think she was a toddler, and her dad was a soldier who was in a base not far from there, according to the mom. Anyway, I sent that picture to my mother early September of '68, and a week or so later, I got this big old box of a goodie box,
Darling.
candy and canned chiles and stuff like that, chicharrones, um, and a little doll.
Mhm.
And there was one other item for a kid. Anyway, when we left that spot, a doll in a dress, a little pink dress, kind of like a quinceañera style dress, real fluffy. Anyway, we were pulling out of the bridge, and I dug the stuff out of the box and I gave it to the mother, and they were like really freaked out. They were so, how would I say it? Um, appreciative of a GI looking out for reaching out to a kid and their family. So that, even though it was a war, that stuff would, all the horror and stuff and was kind of mitigated by stuff you learned at home, caring for people, etc.
Your little sisters.
Yeah. So if you get the book, it's on page 106.
Read it.
The story, great picture too.
Yeah.
Jocelyn?
Hello, I'm Jocelyn. I'm from East LA. Orale.
I was there the other day for the moratorium.
All right, cool. Yeah, Salazar Park. I work for Parks and Recreation, so there we go. I was kind of wondering about the cognitive dissonance and the role of religiosity. Personally, being in something that is, the way we're raised to, follow the commandments in religious households, get blessings from our parents before we go anywhere, and then go to have this thing that, is totally against what we're taught, and how that, if the war was a turning point, and if religiosity after was any kind of salvation for, getting back to who you were and how you changed.
Yeah, one of the things with that is that even though I'm not a religious person anymore, but I was at the time, and one of the 10 Commandments, my favorite 10 Commandments is, "Thou shalt not kill," unless you read the fine print. Okay, and how do you reconcile that? Okay, but "Thou shalt not kill." I really like that commandment. If we went along with it, it would be great. But it's a contradiction. It's a cognitive dissonance, as you say. You're not supposed to kill, but then again, they say, well, you're defending your land. No, we were not defending our land. I mean, the Vietnamese didn't even have a navy, right? It's that we are basically, ever since we were little kids, you pledge allegiance, you go to catechism, all that stuff. You do what the priest tells you. They bless you. There's a really good song called "Spill the Wine." Sky Pilot. No, it's Spill the. No, it's called Sky Pilot, and it says "Spill the Wine." Eric Burden and War, where the Sky Pilot is the priest. He'll bless you, and he'll tell you to go to war. But then after that, he'll take off. He's a sky pilot. He doesn't stay. So yeah, there seems to be a contradiction there.
There is a topic in the church, in the Bible, or by one of the apostles, that addresses a just war, and it has criteria for stuff that pertains to going to war, and one of them is not hurting kids or civilians unless you absolutely had to. And my background is I was raised as a good Catholic boy in a Chicano church, which was hardcore Mexicanos who had brought all the traditions and rituals with them from Mexico. So we did have these big processions with the saints and the singing, the high-pitched voices, and that was my influence as a little kid. And as an adult, I took that with me to the war. And at one point, my Catholic buddy, Francis Lucangelo from South Philly, we were always walking point or backup for the company, and he was really frustrated because they wouldn't put us anywhere else. So he called me over. This is also in the book. He calls me over and says, "Richard, pray with me now." So I said, "Okay." And he said his prayer was, "God, if this is the day that I die, so be it." And that was it. So I kept that with me and I would recite it to myself internally a lot of times just to kind of calm myself down from it may from the possibility of not making it back. But it did help. Prayer and meditation as an adult is what I was about to say. Um, you don't necessarily have to go to church or be a member of a church to practice religion or religious beliefs.
Mm.
That's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you. I did have a couple questions, but I guess one of my main ones is like, what was the hardest part about coming back? Because we've heard all these stories. This is something I've always kind of researched, but to hear from you guys firsthand, what was the hardest part about coming back to the States for you individually?
For me, it was political. Of course, besides, just being out there in terms of your psychology, if you read a book called The Body Keeps the Score, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's a very good book by this neuroscientist. And it tells you how your not just your mind but your body holds all that trauma in, and then especially if you were in the infantry, I mean, 24/7. It wasn't the trauma itself when you get to firefights or you get mortared and things of this sort, but also this 24/7. You can't sleep deprivation. You had to watch where you were walking, where you sat down. Even when you went to the bathroom, you had to have your gun. And then when you get back home, they take your gun away. And then it's the Chicano movement, revolution. And that's really hard. It was hard for me anyway, but it was political, other than, of course, my own psychology. And it's, Corky Gonzalez, Reyes Lopez Tijerina, who I interviewed once. And it was all this turmoil. Uh, People were calling for revolution and things of that sort. The walkouts, the Chicano moratorium, all these things, like it hit me at one time when I came home.
Let's see. I got out of the army. I got home from Nam in July 27th of 70, and I started hanging out with my old friends who were going to city and San Jose City and San Jose State, and they were all active or involved somehow in the movement. And then I saw the ad for the moratorium in LA, and I thought, wow, that would be cool to go. So I got a friend, and we jumped in my '68 Bug, drove to LA, found the park, parked the car in the neighborhood a couple of blocks away, and walked into the park there. So we're sitting around listening to folklorico, and my wife sang there actually, and her brother and cousin. Anyway, my buddy goes, well, let's go get some beer or something. So we walked to the corner, just diagonally from where we were, the corner liquor store. And we're waiting, deciding what to get. Oh, let's get a bottle of wine. So we're waiting there. And then all of a sudden, you hear the front window crash. And guys run in, start stealing stuff and running out with it. And I go, dang, let's get out of here. Forget the beer. Let's go back. So we get back to the park, and the cops have formed a skirmish line, they lined up on line with their batons and tear gas. So I had to run through the crowd to get to my car. And by that time, the CS gas was getting to me. And I thought, what the heck? I thought that stuff was over, because you use a lot of it in the military. Anyway, that was rough. And what else was hard? Um, Intrusive thoughts. I was a student in the early '70s, so I went to City College, and I got into San Jose State. I don't know how. My grades were terrible. I think it was EOP helped me. So I signed. By then, I was reading Carlos Castaneda, and about the Yaquis and cultural anthropology. So I'd go to the library, and there's this little area where you could sit down. It's called the book stacks. And there's little spots with windows and a chair and a small counter that you could read. So I would go up there and I'd be reading for, half an hour, and then all of a sudden I'm back in Nam. This stuff is just coming out. And I go, what the hell? I didn't think about it. It just popped up. So that's how my short stories began, um, about what was going on at the time and how I felt. So being a student was kind of difficult for me. Um, then I was in a band. I played a lot of music as a kid, and then I joined this band, the band my wife was in, and her brothers and cousins. And at first, it was very cool. We did a lot of Cuban music and rancheras, kind of a mix of Latin music. And then the group joined another group, co-joined another group, which was in another family. And all of a sudden, there was the change. You had to dress a certain way, etc. And there was rhetoric, like far left rhetoric. And I told my buddy, the bass player Ben, my real old friend, I said, Ben, I can't listen to that anymore because communists were trying to kill me, and I was chasing them for a couple of years just recently. I can't do this. So that word got out to the leader, one of the leaders, and the next thing I knew, I was out. I had recorded on the album, but got no credits, no pictures, none of that stuff, just completely cut out. And the anger stood with me until a couple of years ago when it was resolved. I spoke with one of the former members, and it helped a lot. So that was another rough rhetoric. Dealing with rhetoric that's far left doesn't appeal to me all the way because it's not tied to social change, the way I want it to be. Um, those are some of the rough areas, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I was there in August 29th at Travis Air Base waiting to be uh, transferred to Aurora. And I was laying in my bed. I had just recovered from my first bout with malaria. And I saw the police, what they were doing. So I was still in my, soldier mode. And I think, oh, I know how to handle those police, right? I was just in a firefight about 3 weeks ago. I know how to deal with these guys. Oh, I was thinking, I had my machinations and, uh, you know, uh, of how to deal with the police. And they got guns. Well, I mean, you have to understand how the transition from being in a battlefield over here, and then there was a battlefield over here, except this time I'm on the Chicano side, and that doesn't help. That certainly does not help in my thinking at the time. Oh, they tell you, oh, you shouldn't be violent. Hey, they're violent. That kind of thing. And that's another thing is on killing people. It's very uh, unusual who could kill and who can't from a moral point of view, right? They say thou shalt not kill, but then they give you medals for killing people. There seems to be a big contradiction there. Okay. And so these things are not easy things to deal with. And also, when I was going to school, I went to school in Berkeley, and at that time it was mostly a white university, and the students, and I think I had what do you call it, attention deficit disorder. I could not sit down for more than 50 minutes, and then it's very alienating when you go to these classes like in physical anthropology where there's 400 or 500 students. Y parecía mosca en leche, mostly just white people, and so it's very difficult to get through school. And also the violent thing when I saw who my enemies were now were domestic enemies. Okay, I've just transitioned from over there over here. Of course, I don't have those feelings anymore, but that was my feeling. Now I had a cause, right? There was a lot of gente talking about that stuff, so you just fall into it. And it was the time of hate Whitey, remember? Hate the gringos, hate the gabachos. So for me, it was very difficult from that point of view.
Thank you. I was going to say, Richard, that's kind of some of the stuff I enjoyed most about the book was you talking about music and like your love for music. It takes this situation of both books that's tough and hard and negative and scary just something a little more light-hearted that makes you guys happy, that pushes you forward. So I enjoyed that part of the book. Also, you said something a little bit ago, Richard, that I didn't want us to just skip over. You were there just feet away, essentially, as Ruben Salazar was essentially assassinated, correct? Oh, you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, the liquor store I mentioned earlier was on the corner by the park, and the bar, the Silver Dollar Bar, was within 2 blocks from there. And the same cops that were beating up people were the ones that closed the street and started checking businesses, and somehow they got to him. And I did find out that he got killed, right? He was hit with a projectile in the head. He's laying there for 3 hours before there was any police investigation. And he was supportive of the community, and he actually marched, I believe. But I found out that the family settled for $750,000, which I thought was low, but maybe it was a lot then. But he's my journalistic hero. I've read a number of his articles, and being born in LA, having an LA orientation there was some pride in that. I was born in Torrance, raised in a couple of LA areas. One was Boyle Heights, and the other one was in Ventura. It was actually in Ventura County.
Great. I just didn't want to skip over that. That was such like a big moment of Chicano history, and you were there for it. So thank you, and thank you both for these stories have been great. I mean, I don't want to cut anybody off early or anything like that. Do we have any other questions before we kind of close up shop here? If you guys want to have like a last couple minutes to tell us about what's coming up.
Yeah, I also have a ethnic studies learning channel. I have some pilots on YouTube. I have some lectures done, a couple of lectures done from Professor Villarreal, who did some lectures on the Olmecs and the Monte Blanc, I believe it is. And then I did one on Tiburcio Vasquez, the Bandido, a lecture documentary. I also have one on La Señora González. She was 100 years old when I interviewed her. She was right there from San Antonio, New Mexico, from up in the mountains. And I interviewed her. She was a farm working woman before she died at 103. I try to get people from our communities and a very unrecognized people. She's not famous or anything, but she is to me and to the backbone of our communities. It's called La Señora González. I also did one on Joey Villarreal, who did 10 years in solitary confinement. I also have a book. Hopefully by the new year, I'm going to start a volume of Chicano and Chicana history and encyclopedia. Okay, with language and geography and things of this sort, both in English and Spanish. So I mean, our gente are just, there's so much stuff that has to be written, and I'm glad that Richard and with Josie, I actually published one of Josie Negrette's. I published her first book a while back. I think I published about 35 people. I published Jose Montoya, Jose Antonio Burciaga, Patricia Gonzalez. I've been doing this for about 30 years. I'm a very small publisher, but I really try to actually get a gender parity as well. I went down to Mexico, trying to get this guy, La Flor de Tabasco, transgender guy, Chabolin. He's very popular on YouTube. I wanted to make sure if I could write his book, but he didn't want to, or she didn't want to. So I'm very open about the people that I published. And even in my book, The Soldados, I disagree with a lot of the guys, but that doesn't make any difference. I let people talk their piece and what they think, even though I may disagree, because it's not good. It's just what I say. That's not, that's too limited.
Awesome.
Yeah, As you can see, I'm the new guy at this. This is my very first book. Although I started a second one. It's really in its infancy. And I decided to do fiction because you don't have to cite references, which is really time consuming. As far as I recall, you don't have to cite references. Anyway, events on November 14th, I'll be in San Antonio for a book reading with a number of other authors that are under Josie Negrete. And I'm hoping to meet one guy that I consider the Chicano Rambo. His name is Israel. That's his first name. Anyway, he's got a Israel Tames from San Antonio. When he came home, he was a big shot at the VA, and he hung out with what was the female governor of Texas with the white hair? Anybody remember?
Richards.
Richard.
Yeah, they were very close friends, and he worked with her often. Anyway, I put him on our guest list, and another guy I put on my guest list is a friend of mine that I used to walk to high school with. And then when I got to Nauman March, I ran into him in a village. We had some free time to go drink a beer or whatever. And I hadn't seen him since then. And then about 2 months ago, I found him on Facebook. So I contacted him and we met up recently for the first time in 57 years.
Wow.
And it's like it was last week that we had seen each other. But we have a lot to offer each other, a lot of comfort, a lot of stories. That's kind of new what's going on with me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Josie?
Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And I want to express my appreciation to Charley for not turning me away and believing that my story had to see the light of day. He published something that nobody else would have published. And especially if you look at what's happening right now with the Epstein case, you see how the abuse of women is generally pervasive all over the place. So I really appreciate that he was willing to take a risk to tell a story that needed to be told. And with Richard is one of the most amazing, creative human beings I've ever met. He, along with Deborah, were wonderful in the creation of the book. And I love his spiritual sense of self and his connection to the community. He's told a story that needed to be told as well. And I thank you for putting this event together so that we can let people know that our stories need to be told, that they have merit, that they have value, and that if we don't tell them now, they're never going to be written by somebody else. And Robert, thank you for making it possible for us
Yeah,
to
Robert.
this conversation and for giving me an opportunity to have my say. Richard, we're going to have flautas de papas con queso and other goodies at Galeria Eva by one of the premier cooks in San Antonio. Okay, so hey, Charley, you may want to come.
Yeah.
Are we all invited? I heard
Hey,
Not you, not
si
you.
saben cómo llegar y si no cuesta nada, okay? If you know how to get here and you have your own housing, because I already have my house in delegated, right? Richard, Deborah, I hope you're coming with your honey and your daughter.
I hope so, Josie. Thank you so much.
Te quiero mucho y cuídate, por favor, okay?
Igualmente,
Charley,
amor.
gracias. You put me on the stage, so you take credit for some of
Stay
that.
on there, stay on there.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Eres un héroe. Chicano hasta las cachas.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank
And we should connect because now I'm very curious about your book. And yeah, we could promote that a bit and talk about it. I love being able to promote and meet all of you with these great stories. I mean, we could read the big names all day long. Anybody can do that, but
Right.
I love meeting. you all.
Josie and I lived in East LA. I'm one of those urban migrants. And I went to Garfield High School when
Me
Garfield
too.
was it. You too? Okay, okay, well, good to see you all. Thank you for doing this. And Richard, can't wait to see you. Charlie, gracias.
A usted, muchacha.
Thank you all
Okay.
so much. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to throw a thank you. And yeah, we're very appreciative. Thank you for your time. This has been great. This has been great.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to Josie. She's my publisher and editor. And whenever I would hit a block, I would tell her, and she would guide me and help me make sense of what I was trying to say. So a lot of credit goes to her.